Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into our next item on the agenda, I want to introduce, the board knows, but those of you here in the audience and the staff and everyone, we had a vacancy on the board, as you know, and after our last meeting, we interviewed candidates, 5 great candidates that we interviewed. Unbelievable, the interest and the desire and the commitment and experience people had. But in the end, the board chose Justin Wagner. So I want to introduce him to everybody and give him a minute to say whatever he'd like.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you to the board here for the opportunity to serve with you, and hello to the community. I look forward to meeting everybody. There's a lot of familiar faces, even with the masks out. That's okay. But I guess I'm jumping into the deep end of the pool, so I'm ready to swim. Ready to roll up the sleeves. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So now we are going to move on to our building committee. That seems like forever, and we were just discussing it's been 8.5 years since it started. So that committee has put a lot of time and effort and personal sacrifice into this project. But I think speak for everybody in the town and here on how grateful we are. And I'm going to turn it over to you guys. You have a little report and update for us before we have a motion to make.
Hi, I'm Sharon Smith. I'm the chair of the building committee, and Cynthia Abraham is here with me. So as we represent the rest of the committee, it would be Michelle Barber, who was she was the vice chair, Roy Goffner, Mike Zimmerman, Tom Seidowitz, David Ninesling, and Thomas Cook. You'd think I would know their names by now, but I didn't want to miss anybody, so I wanted to be sure that I said that. We came before the board to give an interim report, or one we were very close to the end, and I said to the board that this was a labor of love, and I really believe that, and I think Cynthia can attest to that. In the beginning, we were meeting literally 4 nights a week, and because we had to review, we were reviewing the proposals from the various, the architects and project managers. We had a few moments of drama within the 8.5 years, but for the most part, it was just a joy. And we're so pleased to be able to turn it over to you. We're happy that we're done, and it was done well, and it's being enjoyed on a daily basis. So it's been our pleasure.
Good.
More importantly,
the most important part.
More importantly, we turned it back, not having spent the money that we were approved.
Yeah.
So
There it is. Look at that.
So it was, and somebody has to do some math. Really? I know, that looks a little difficult. I was a business manager in Glasgow. You should worry. Unfortunately, I'm not that anymore. But yeah, no, we didn't spend our allotment. We were very proud of that, and we think this is just a gorgeous building.
Yeah, you did an outstanding job, all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any comments or questions anybody wants to make? Paul, anything you want to add to that?
Let me just add just a couple of things. I just thought we should look at just a couple of pictures because there's so much detail that just makes our building special. Just how they were going to do the letters, they painstakingly decided several different designs just at East Hampton High School. Before it was over the front entrance, but with the new covering there, it was just not going to work. This is a picture that Irene took one night after a board meeting or a budget meeting. In any light, our building just looks spectacular. Just some of the details in the cafeteria to make it feel like home to our students. the gym, and then every wall you go to, these have been plastered on the wall. And this was a picture right before graduation, because of the COVID-19, we did the graduation in cars out in front of the building. And this building, not only inside, but outside, it makes a spectacular backdrop for any event. So thank you both very much. The board does have a little gift for you, Chris. I don't know if you want to
Yeah, well, you
have
know
that
what?
come forward.
Let's,
the motion.
we're gonna make a motion first, so if I could, get a motion that the East Hampton Board of Education accept the high school building project, state project number 042-0041, EARR, as complete.
So moved.
Jeff, is there a second? Jim, everyone's hands are going up. Any other comments, questions of that? All those in favor? Say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. If you two could come forward, and actually, let's get Eric and Matt. What do we have from the high school here?
Oh, photo.
Photos. And you each get a stamp for each of you.
How are we gonna split these up? We're not.
You're not. I like that. I guess we're here, so come on up here, you guys.
Oh, boy, girl, boy.
Oh, look at that.
6 feet.
Okay.
I'll do the Roger Abraham. Okay, sorry.
All right, oh, we have a gorgeous picture of the school in the background. Look for this on Facebook in 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Right. So now we move on to another beginning of a fun discussion already, even though it's beginning in November, our budget forum. So, Paul, you want to take the lead and
Absolutely.
update where things are at?
So this year, we did the process a little bit differently, only because we did not want people to have to come in, but we certainly invited them. Usually you have 20 people are here making requests, but we allowed them to make requests through their principals or through me. So I do have a list of things that were sent to me. I know the principals have a list. And if there's anybody in the public who wants to make comments as to what they'd like to see in the budget next year, this is the night to do it. After tonight, all the formal budget requests are due to the principals this coming Friday. That's the first important date, as you look up on the screen. And then December 1, everything is due to the superintendent, and the board gets actively involved again on Monday, January 11th, where we will present the budget to you. You know, this is a year that is certainly like no other. I thought last year was the year like no other. This is the year certainly that is not even like last year. At least we got to present the budget, develop most of the budget before we all went away. But it's a year where we are certainly hoping to keep the advancements that we had, and without a tremendous amount of additional funding beyond what we got last year, really try to do some innovative programs and move ahead. In fact, I started calling this the moving ahead year, but it's not enough. I think we have to take the charge, and this board has to commit to leading ahead and bringing the school district as far as we can take it, even during a pandemic. We don't just sit back and say, okay, it's a lost year, we'll regain next year. I think we move forward as aggressively as we can, making sure that our students have what they need and our school continues to grow. So with that, we are going to start with anybody in the public who wants to make any comments, and then we'll let each principal and Mary and Rod go through and address some of the specifics with you, and then I'll add anything that I receive from the public.
Okay. So start part. Okay, there's public number one.
Hi, I'm Richard Fielding, 30 South Main Street. I'm also Technology Director for the school district. So I kind of have mixed roles, one as a parent and one as an employee of the district. This year, I'm here to actually promote my school district side of things, the technology. But since Paul opened it up to Paul first, I thought I'd get mine in first. Don't mind if I said I need to be able to read my notes, sorry. So I like what Paul just said. One of the things that I would put quotes around is keep the advancements. I think one of the things that we've learned over the last several months since the pandemic began was how reliant on technology we are. I think the technology department and the staff that work for me have done an amazing job keeping everybody connected, keeping devices in place, but it's only because we have not stopped at all. We've all been working crazily. We are all pushed to the edge every day to make sure that everything's working. And we appreciate, we've gotten a lot of great feedback for it, and we really do appreciate it. And like I said, I really we all owe the staff of the technology department for all the work that they're doing, and I feel like we're getting a lot of good kudos for that, so I appreciate that always. One of the things I would really like to promote myself as a parent, but then also kind of put it out there is something to consider. One of the big changes we made this year in moving to the pandemic was a one-to-one Chromebook program, really kindergarten through 12th grade. It's not something we've ever been able to support before because we didn't have the devices, and we certainly didn't have the ability to support devices that went home with students every day at the elementary schools. We worked to make that happen at the high school a few years ago. It's been working out really well. We do get a lot of damage to devices because those devices are going in and out of backpacks. They don't have cases. The kids will not leave the cases on when we do put them on, so it's a lost cause. But then we also have them at the middle school, and we have a lot of damage at the middle school because devices would go in backpacks. They didn't have good cases. And then we've also been in this situation where we're fighting every year to get Chromebooks for the middle school, so it's really been a program that hasn't been consistent at all. We started this year with no Chromebooks in 6th and 7th grade, only for 8th graders. We've had to fight tooth and nail for every device that we've gotten with the Capital Committee, to the Board of Finance, to the Town Council, to the voters. Every year, technology, especially Chromebooks, this year will be different, we know, but has been a fight, and that's the case with all technology that we purchase. All technology goes through capital. Okay, so this year things are changing where Chromebooks have been ideally being moved to the general operating budget, and what I'm trying to promote is that I think we are ready to maintain this one-to-one Chromebook program, K through 12, with the learners allowed to bring the devices home, just the same way they're doing now. We're having huge success with the cases that we provided, with the students' responsibility for maintaining these devices and bringing them home and having access to all the tools that they used to only have access to in school. The programs we're paying for, lots of money for, Nucella, iReady, all these programs that have tons of features, we didn't have guaranteed access at home, and now we do. But that's only because of the pandemic, and because we prioritize making sure that those kids K through 5 plus grades 6 and 7 got the devices and had the ability to bring them home. I think we need to keep that advancement and consider, instead of the proposal which I had put forward in the previous years to maintain purchasing of 2 grade levels worth of Chromebooks every year, that would be enough to maintain the middle school and the high school with a one-to-one, and the hand-me-downs going to the elementary schools. If instead we switch to 3 grade levels worth of Chromebooks every year, give them to the 1st grade, the 5th grade, and the 9th grade, and have those devices planned for a 4-year lifespan, still with hand-me-downs to go to the kindergarten, but that we can manage that a little bit differently than we do the other grades. Then we can maintain that one-to-one program that we have right now that's working so well. One of the reasons the big change we had to make was we had to get rid of carts in the schools elementary schools. The devices don't go in carts anymore where all the charging centers were. We had to eliminate that, and that's what's really made this program work. So that's Chromebooks. I'm also this year proposing that the technology budget, hardware budget, repairs budget be increased. You may not know this, but after reviewing numbers today, we looked at the total amount of money allocated to the technology department for repairs and for purchasing of hardware throughout the year, outside of capital, which is very restrictive. This year I have $11,000 for the entire budget. Okay, so that's all the projector lamps, document cameras, all the parts that we need to repair things, $11,000. There's no room for innovation. We can't innovate with numbers like that. We have to go and beg for every dollar from PTOs to get what we need. That's not a sustainable model. So, I don't have a number that I'm asking for. I'm just putting that out there as something to think about as we move forward in the budgeting process. We still have capital items that we need to consider. The high school teachers have laptops that are now going to be 6 years old. We purchased laptops for the high school during the building project. So 1 year we bought half the teachers' devices, and then in the year that I got here in 2016, we purchased the other half. Those need to be cycled out, the ones that are now at 6 years old. So we'll be asking capital for half of the high school teacher devices to be replaced. This year we had an electrical surge that took out phone system at middle school, as well as our key fob systems at 3 of the schools. We were very lucky in a way that insurance covered the majority of that, because those are items that really needed to be replaced. The reason insurance covered them was because they couldn't be repaired, because they were so old, there was no parts available for any of them. We're in the same situation with phone systems at the center school and the memorial school. Those phone systems are going on 20-something years old. Those need to be replaced. Those are going to be in my capital requests. We have transitioned our video surveillance system to a much better system than it has been in place. We had 4 separate systems in the district for each school. We've migrated all of the systems into one centralized system, but we put it together with all the hardware from those 4 old systems. So there's only one good quality server to manage the system, and we need a little bit more storage space, so that's going to be in my capital request either, because that's a server, and that qualifies under the town's capital improvements program. And lastly, for technology hardware, something that the building principals and I had quick conversations around today, but is really the most visible issue in every classroom around the district is the disparity between what the kids are actually seeing when the rubber meets the road, is what's up there in front of them. The interactive displays that we have, the projectors, we have a hodgepodge of technology in classrooms pre-K through 8. I feel like we are ready to come up with a district plan for how we replace that in consultation with teachers and what is going to best serve them in the classroom, but also being realistic about what they actually have time to learn for all of the new tools that they have, what's actually going to be the most effective use of devices in the classroom. Technology has advanced and prices have come down quite a bit on that. So that's going to be something that we start talking about. I don't envision that being something for next year, but it's definitely something that we need to start really talking about, because right now, those meager dollars for repairs, that's what they're going towards. They're going to replace power supplies in projectors that are 10+ years old. Okay, and then my 2 and probably, I mean, you're all like, wow, he's got a lot of stuff on his list. That's a big ask.
Don't hold back.
I haven't really done this in several years,
Yeah.
so I got makeup to do. So I have 2 staffing requests. Right now, we have kept on my summer intern who graduated from high school last year. He has been coming to work every day since June repairing Chromebooks. Right now, he repairs on average 8 Chromebooks a day that aren't usable in the classroom, We pull them from the classroom, we switch the device to the student, they go to him, he gets parts, pulls parts from other machines, he repairs and gets back into service 8 Chromebooks a day. Prior to him working, our average for Chromebook turnaround was between 2 and 6 a week. So imagine where we would be if instead of 40 Chromebooks a week getting turned back around and back into service, we only had 2 to 6 going out there. We would be done in 2 days, unable to support the Chromebooks that are in service right now. My ask is if that we are going to do my other ask, which is to maintain a K through 12 Chromebook program where students have the ability to bring the devices home, we also need to support it because it will fall apart immediately if we don't have somebody to actually be fixing the devices and keeping them in good working order. And lastly, the technology department has, we are often referred to as small but mighty, and one of the reasons is because I'm doing two full-time jobs, one as the technology director and one as the student database administrator. So I manage Power School, I manage all of the report cards and collaborate but oversee most of the scheduling from the back end side of things. All of the communication systems that come out of it, ParentSquare, all of the account creation, student usernames, passwords, all of those things are all based out of our student information system that manages student demographic data. Just about every other school system, and I don't have numbers to give you right now, but I will as we move forward in this process, has a full-time or at least a 3/4 time, in schools we use 0.6 or 0.8, student database administrator, and it's something that we're severely lacking in right now. Right now we do have a person who does some of those functions, like state reporting. She right now, last year billed, because she's hourly, 289 hours. So she's basically a 0.15 currently. So I'm saying I would like that person's position to be moved up to a full-time position, to take off some of the workload that's on me, but also to expand a lot of what we aren't doing right now with regards to reporting, with data analytics, with being able to really make a lot of these data that we're collecting speak and be available to teachers in real meaningful ways that they can make use of, but also just a number of other things. And I know I've dragged on quite a bit, so I'm not going to try and talk about all those different things. But so, anyways, that's what I have for you. I've got the list. I'll make sure I email it so that in case anything was missed. But I appreciate all of your time and letting me go on. So thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
The 2 new years of Chromebooks that we do currently, you suggested 3. What were those grades again you were suggesting for the new Chromebooks?
So when we do 2 years, we do 6 and 9,
Yeah.
so that they kind of stay building based.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm suggesting that we do grade 1, grade 5, and grade 9.
Okay.
Because I don't think the building should be determining, if we're going to do this, then the turnaround would be a 4-year lifespan. You get it in 1st grade, you keep it through 4th grade.
Yep.
And then you have more ownership of the device. A lot of especially at middle school, when they get the same device back the next year, you should have seen some of the parents, sorry, this one's great. A parent emailed me, because we have a connection outside of school, what's this garbage Chromebook my son came home with? It's all beat to heck. Like, yeah, it was brand new when we gave it to him last year. Oh, he didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. That's good. Thank you. Other public comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Neil Karen, Intervale Road, Havernack. So I can't hide behind this mask. I know a lot of these principles. I drive for DACO. First of all, to the board, I sat on the board at District 17. It's a thankless job, so thank you for everything you guys are doing this year with what's going on. With this being a budget discussion tonight, I guess this kind of falls into it. At the beginning of the year, we had the meeting prior to the school opening. The question was brought up on, with not working Wednesdays or transporting on Wednesdays, are the drivers going to get paid? We were told that's up in a discussion with the Board of Ed and DACO. Do we know where that discussion is right now? I'm not representing DACO or the other drivers. It's, you know, we're not working Wednesdays. And in the spring, we were getting paid our full ravel. So with it being brought up as a discussion with the Board of Ed and DACO, where's that at right now?
I can give you a quick answer.
Yeah, good.
DACO has assured us that they're paying drivers for every day.
I can tell you that that's not true because I have not gotten paid once. So with no school on Wednesdays,
Yeah.
I've not gotten paid for one Wednesday. I'm out 50 hours right now.
Yeah, and that's what DACO is telling us. Now, as you recall last year, the board will recall, where we did not use DACO from the month of March to the end of the year,
Right.
we still paid 80% of every day's daily run. And DACO assured us that that 80% would cover the drivers. We have asked DACO for that same agreement this year, and they have said no, that they want 100%. We have not been willing to pay them 100%. We're still willing to pay the 80%. We're a district that doesn't have to pay up front. A lot of districts pay their whole money up front. We don't have to pay the money up front. DACO has said they're paying the drivers. We've agreed to pay 80% on the days that we don't have school. We had 4 Wednesdays in September, and we're about to, tomorrow's a holiday, but we're about to enter 3 more Wednesdays. So, you know, Neil, I'm not trying to stall or anything here. So our offer has been made to DACO to have the same exact agreement as last year.
So that 80% is not being paid right now, correct?
That 80% is not being paid right now because DACO has said they want 100%, and we refuse to pay the 100%.
So with the 80% or the percentage that would be used for transportation, typically on an enrollment school year, is, and I also as a taxpayer, is that money that's not being used this year going to be deducted from the line item for next fiscal year? Because you're not using that money right now, obviously, because you aren't paying DACO. So is that money going to be deducted for next year's budget, or what's going to happen with that money that you're not using this year for transportation?
So this year for transportation, if they do agree to the 80%, or whatever we finally, if there's any money there, that will offset the tremendous increase we've had in PPE, masks,
Right.
gowns, and everything like that.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so please know that, you know, and Karen and I are working with DACO. The offer's on the table for the same exact agreement as last year. I know a couple of towns they've kind of settled with, and, you know, we're a smaller town, and I'm sorry that they're not paying the drivers. We've been led to believe that they are still paying the drivers for Wednesdays.
And it's not throwing, no pun intended, throwing anybody under the bus. It's just finding out, you know, the money starts here, where is it not going? This way, if you guys have paid that 80% and we're not getting paid, now it's a question for me to ask DACO, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just getting the ducks.
Well, and I think you can appreciate both as a driver and a taxpayer that, you know, I'm willing to pay DACO to cover the drivers, so no driver has a loss. And I think 80% is a very fair figure in that.
Oh, absolutely, especially with what's going on. So it's, you know, you guys are doing what you can. It's,
Yeah.
I appreciate what everybody in this room is doing.
But our intention is not to impact the drivers at all.
Hey, we still didn't show up either way, so.
Yeah.
We're here as much as you guys are.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate that, and we also appreciate, you know, bus driving hasn't become any less complicated with the pandemic.
I'm not gonna lie, I like this group A, group B, less kids on the bus, it's a little bit quieter in the morning. But I do appreciate your time, thank you.
Thank you.
When do we usually make our payments to? Is it at the end of the fiscal year? again?
No,
No.
it's
End of each month.
end of each month.
Oh, okay.
Other public comments? Bob, public side? Anything from you? No? Okay, so next in line, I think we're going to turn over to the principals. Go through budget requests, correct? Who would like to, oh, Andy's got his hand up, he's ready.
Good evening, everyone. Justin, welcome to the board. Before I get going with the very concise list I have of requests, I just wanted to thank the board for all the support over the years, and that continued right through this year. Proud with all the programming we have at Memorial School. I think, working closely with Mr. Mosier to have the STARS, the ABA programs, and with our district goal of social emotional wellness, I think our building has been very well supported. That being said, as we look to lead ahead, we want to make sure that these programs are staffed appropriately. So I would like to have the board consider an ABA teacher to support our program at Memorial School, which has grown and is doing really well. And this year we requested 2 school psychologist interns, and only got 1, and I think they are a real bang for their buck, and they provide a lot of much needed support, so I'd like to pursue that again. Branching off what Mr. Fielding shared, I think we need to continue to further digitize our schools. The pandemic has shown us how reliant we are in many ways on technology, but it's also really brought to the forefront the power of these platforms and how we can really personalize learning for students and provide resources at home. He mentioned some, but Screencastify, iReady instructional seats, those are some other things that I would like to highlight. But I think speaking specifically about our related arts, that is an area that we did not really get to digitize more. So I'd like to even look into our PE facilities, our music offerings, our art offerings, our library. I know that in previous years we had requested a foreign language teacher. I'd like to see if there's any type of application or program that we might be able to look into to try to offer that experience to our youngest learners. And I've always been an advocate for looking at more STEM labs / opportunities. And if we can, again, do that through technology rather than through staffing, that I think would be a creative approach. And the last thing that I'm bringing to the table today, I think that Memorial School is in need of a more rich and diverse classroom library. I think that we currently have a lot of material to offer, but it's been 4 years now that I've been the building principal, and I think we could really refresh the offerings that we have for our kids. Trying to give them more opportunities to read about building character, kindness, confidence, growth mindset, exploring their interests, love of family, because we know that families come in all different shapes and sizes, celebrating world diversity, more multicultural text. So those are some of the things that I'm requesting tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. So at Center School, kind of staying in line and have a through line between us and Memorial. With that digital learning component, in the past few years, I've asked for a foreign language teacher for exposure at the elementary level. Obviously, the pandemic has brought many things to light, one of those being a flexible learning environment. So through that, one of the programs I had been looking at is called Duolingo, which is both a web-based and app-based program. It's kind of a freemium model, whereas you could get a per student subscription, and it offers, again, the learning at any time, anywhere type model, which, depending on whatever model we're in, it would be something that could be implemented, offering 35 plus languages through that. So while it never will replace the instruction of a foreign language teacher, I think that it would be of impact in a variety of models. Also, an important part of our SEL programming has been Second Step. We've implemented it, and we're looking to continue to grow that practice with fidelity with our students. Something that is coming online soon is a component for the adults. And in typical, some of the SEL models, if you were to take a look at the Yale ruler model, they often ask that you work it through with your staff for a year so that they take complete ownership of it. That is coming out soon for Second Step, and as we know, educators play the most meaningful role in a child's social emotional development, and they're going to build a program that will empower every adult in the school with the skills they need to create a positive learning environment. So we would look to implement that with all of our staff once that does come online. And last, we had a successful implementation through Board of Ed funding, as well as through grants and support of the East Hampton Rotary, with our STEM and robotic program that was rolled into our Library Media Center. So with that program, we have the materials and are using it really for one grade level. So what we'd like to do is increase the offerings that we have within that program so that we can kind of diversify the offerings to offer a 4th grade curriculum as well as a 5th grade curriculum. As we were sort of working through it and kind of piloting it as a full program last year, we used the same activities for both grades to make sure that we're building curriculum that was appropriate and trying to use the tools that we had and see, how deep we can go with them. So if, we could increase some of the components of that, some of the Lego robotics, some of the coding options, some of the snap circuits. It was something that we'd love to get back into. Unfortunately, in the current environment, we have taken a little bit of a hiatus because it is a lot of shared materials, but we're looking forward to making sure that we can implement that program again with the building.
Middle school.
Yes. So I think a pretty substantial request for the middle school would be flexible classroom furniture. I was fortunate enough to go through the school system here and go to be a student at East Hampton Middle School, but I probably also sat in some of the same furniture 27 years ago. And that supports the instructional model and the instructional changes and focus on student-centered learning that we really want to have in the middle school. Student collaboration, small group instruction, flexible seating arrangements, even with how we are moving to a more digital platform, we don't necessarily need students sitting in rows looking at the center of the board. Really, we want to have flexible space for them to be able to collaborate with each other, use their one-to-one devices, and just have a different overall feel for the learning environment of the classroom. COVID has done some things that set us back a little bit in some of the ways and instructional models that we're using, but that's obviously temporary. And we want to make sure that moving ahead, we're supporting that learning environment, and some of that does start with the furniture in the rooms. So that would be our first request. In support of kind of our STEM and math and applied science class, we would love to have some state-of-the-art robotics kits. This would obviously support the larger kind of STEM initiative in Connecticut schools, but also support and promote any initiatives that the high school may have. The middle school, we look at it as a 6-12 kind of program. We're the feeder to the high school. And I think with some of those programs at the middle school and some of those hands-on manipulatives, I think that would really support that STEM initiative. Last, we've been fortunate enough to have the high school host our band and chorus concerts up here, but we could really use an upgrade to our commons area. The commons is kind of like the second organ of the building, with our Library Media Center being the first. It's a hub where we have plays, where we have concerts, where we have assemblies, and we haven't been able to do that because of the infrastructure that's there. I certainly know Neil would support that and our band and chorus. And really, again, if we're looking at our band and chorus and our arts kind of department as a 6-12 initiative, then we're obviously the feeder up to the high school. It may be appropriate to have, a spring concert up here to kind of promote maybe some of those 8th graders into this building. But we really want our students to feel substantial and feel pride and feel supported with that infrastructure. Being able to have those lights and have that sound and all of that being kind of, state of the art and up to date. I think our students really kind of deserve that.
Question on that, are you talking structural changes or accessory, lighting,
Yes,
all that?
accessory.
Okay, so not structural construction?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay,
Unless, of course.
well, yeah.
The roof is next.
I know.
Not the interior.
Yeah, I'm like thinking, okay, what could we do? All right. High school.
So continuing on with that theme of science, technology, engineering, and math, I have 2 requests. One would lead us to, I mentioned this to you a little over a year ago, and I know the world's changed a lot, but I said one of my goals moving forward for East Hampton High School is for all students to have multiple opportunities to take high-level classes specifically in the math and science areas. So my proposal, which will have some staffing implications, is to add 2 new courses and then allow us to enhance a 3rd offering that I know is very important to myself and to many members here, I'd like to ask for the addition of an AP chemistry course and then an AP environmental science course, which would again promote that higher level learning in STEM, learning we talk about with students. And then, if the staffing is handled appropriately, which I have very confidence it could be, allow us to add additional sections of our financial algebra courses for students. I know this is in the world we live in as a parent of a college freshman now, being able to understand the importance of credit cards, loans, student loans, banking, and the things that our young people will need regardless of their pathway when they graduate from high school, whatever it is that they do. And then my second request is to continue to enhance our technology education program. I know we're very excited about our relationship with Graham and the manufacturing pipeline. I know Superintendent Leslie is tired of hearing from Mr. Warner on a weekly basis to check on the progress of that.
Okay.
But our goal is to continue to add programming to our technology education area to support that program and eventually bring a lot of it back to here so we don't have to continually send students. I think it's going to be a great relationship, but the more we can do in-house through our offerings in the technology education department and the robotics equipment and other pieces of equipment in that area, we'll be able to do it ourselves. And those are the two requests that I have.
Okay. Before we move on, any questions for any of the schools? Yeah, I know there will be, but yes. No? Okay. Rodney, yes, sir.
So I have a view. I just want to support Andy's mention of the school psychology intern. We've had a school psychology intern at Memorial School for several years, and I think we get a lot done with support different social, emotional needs. It's very cost effective for us. So I agree. I'd like to expand that to a second school psychology and also help support Central Elementary School as well. It also gives us the University of Connecticut has also recognized some of the great programming that we have. And last year they reached out to Dr. Fresco Hawes about a grant that they're writing and having some traction work there based on the high quality evidence-based practices that he's connected with. So I think that's a compliment to the work they're doing there and the schools that help schools to get from their interns. Another area that we're looking at is our intervention specialists. We anticipate needing to increase our intervention specialists by 2 to 4 during the next school year, and that's really based on projected students coming in from birth to 3 high-need students. So I think over the course of the year, we would anticipate needing to 2 to 4 more intervention specialists.
Is that, I don't want to cut you off, sorry, go ahead. Is that have any correlation to losing that birth to 3 program that was in town? I mean, is this kind of like an effect?
These are kids that are coming into our preschool from birth to 3.
Okay.
They would have been coming in whether we had a birth to 3 program or not.
Okay.
And then the other is, I think we've done a really nice job, and you guys have been incredibly supportive of our program, our specialized programming that has helped us keep the kids in their home school, receive those services that they need in their home school, and not even to drive to Hartford, West Hartford, Windsor. So we provide some really high quality services by hiring those specialized teachers for ABA and STARS, and I think we've also seen a significant cost offset for doing that. What we have not done is hire special ed teachers to support our students as a whole. So I was looking at numbers, and over the last 5 years, we've had an increase of about 100 students in special education services, and we have not increased special ed teachers other than those specialized programs. So I would like to hire a special ed teacher, an additional special ed teacher at all schools, but when I look at the caseloads for next year, I think the greatest impact next year is going to be at center school. We're just looking at October 1 numbers, and we increase, special education students are identified throughout the year. So they increase just October 1 numbers at center school. We're looking at ratios of 15 to 1. And then at the high school, we're looking at an increase, October 1 increase of 16 students. And the ratios are going to be over 18 to 1. So when you have an IEP, you have to get your service hours. You have to meet those service hours. And if you don't have the staff to meet those service hours, it can be problematic. So those would be my suggestions.
thoughts? Yep, and then Mary's next.
First of all, I just wanted to echo the comments of my colleagues, and I think they've highlighted key areas for each building, every program. There's a couple I want to highlight of particular importance, and I think Rod's last request for special education teachers, when you look at those numbers of how we've expanded services, but outside of specialized programming, haven't been able to expand staff, has significant implications for teaching and learning, and I think that's a critical area that we need to consider. I'll go back to the beginning, and there's certain topics that Rich brought up that I want to highlight. Rich and I have very different roles, but intersect all the time because of the integration of technology into teaching and learning from the teacher side, the student side, and how important it is that those two things work really seamlessly. And so the student information management system is not something that you hear a lot about. Oftentimes, at budget time in this district, we're talking about just maintaining classroom teachers and class size. But there's so much that a school district should have going on around its teachers to make that environment effective. And managing student data and how we automate those systems for our teachers is really, really critical work. And Rich really does take on a lot of that in order to make all of the different tools that we are working with, many of which we really have to use, speak to each other. And so that is a sort of under-discussed function in the district. And all of the data that we manage around students, student performance, student attendance, areas that nobody really loves to get into the weeds of that, but it's so important. We also report back to the state. And that data then informs the accountability measures for our district and how the state reports out on our district. So it's an area that I think doesn't get a lot of attention, and I really emphasize Rich's request in that area because I think it's very critical. To that end, something programmatic that I would love to see us add is a data dashboard, which would intersect with the work that Rich was talking about. A data dashboard, I've researched different tools in this area, and there's a range of costs we could associate with that, but we want to evaluate a few different products, is a way for us to not only have our different systems and instructional tools that we use with students speak to each other. It's also a system where we could input data about students as we monitor their progress over time. You often hear me talk about assessment and how we're managing that student data, and we do a lot of that through systems that are not as efficient as they could be if we had a data dashboard. We have our specialists analyzing that data, and there's a layer of that always is going to require expertise and oversight, but communicating it, sharing it out, making it very accessible to anybody who works directly with a student is not something that should be laborious, and currently can be in this district. So I think a data dashboard is a huge need for us. It's a common tool. I would say it's standard in the field and something that's lacking currently in our district. Andy spoke to the iReady instructional seats. And one of the things I want to speak to that and other tools that we purchase to give our teachers databases of resources, access to personalized instruction, tools like Padlet where they can interact with students. We were able to expand our offerings this year because of the budgeted savings from the 1920 school year and purchased in advance some of those tools. I think our teachers are finding many of them to be really important in their instruction, to advance their ability to work with students in smaller groups, to target and be more surgical in response to student needs. And so I think we're going to need to look at all of those tools to see which we can continue to offer. Because now that the students and teachers have them, they're able to be more responsive, and as Chris said, it gives us that anytime, anywhere learning that we're really trying to move towards. Then lastly, something I have to advocate for, Rich talked about people doing more than one job, and that's definitely common in this district. And it speaks to the team and how everyone does what needs to get done. But very common in school districts of our size, and I could throw a rock and hit one around here, and this is what they would have. They have curriculum and instructional specialists, and then an intervention team. And I'm not talking about the interventionists that Rob was just talking about, it's a different group. These would be specialized teachers who work with students when they're demonstrating a deficit in relation to grade level skills. The curriculum side of that would be overseeing curriculum, working with teams, making sure that Every grade level experience, every department is having a guaranteed and reliable experience. Right now, we have a few people who work in these roles, and they do both of them, which is very uncommon, I would say. We used to have 3 literacy specialists at Memorial School. Right now, we have 2. We have 1 at center and 1 at middle, and we were just able to add that 1 at middle, but I'd love to see Memorial get back to 3. We also only have 1 person overseeing math and science, K-5, and she does curriculum instruction and intervention. And so that is not a sustainable model, in my opinion, in order to respond to the range of needs and make sure that we're not only responding to student needs, but teacher needs. So this is an example of where, for our teachers to be as effective as possible, they do need people around them who are supporting their work. You can't do it all alone. Our administrators can't do it all alone, so we do need some people who build that work along the way, beyond the very few that we have.
Just a couple that had come in, we offered people the opportunity to send their requests in to avoid people having to come live tonight. From the PE staff at the middle school, we took their 3rd teacher, and since we could not get a health teacher at the high school, and health is now part of the new requirements for grades 9 and 10, that person is teaching .4 here and .6 at the high school. Middle school. So what they're requesting is the equivalent of a full-time teacher, which would also make the high school a full-time teacher as well. It would restore some of our high school electives in PE as well. A parent has requested a guidance counselor at the center school to promote self-awareness, self-regulation, and obviously the SEL program. Another parent has requested world language in grades 1 through 5. Another parent has requested additional parents in kindergarten, which is usually an annual request. We're not taking volunteers this year due to the pandemic, so there's support needed there. You heard of Mr. Verner talking about enhancing the manufacturing program. The teachers requesting more field experiences to introduce students to those programming. That's available for both engineering majors, and those students might want to go on directly to manufacturing. Some equipment is necessary now that we've partnered with RAM. There's a couple of 3-in-1 Lunar laser and 3D printer that's of the quality needed for that type of program. The art department at the high school is requesting a digital art printer that's used for the digital photography. They haven't had a new one in 13 years, which seems any printer that's 13 years old probably deserves to be celebrated, and that's the brand to buy next. And the music department is requesting an accompanist for their concerts. They pay for it out of the Booster Club. They would like to move that into the budget. What I'll do with all of those requests, principals are going to get me the costs associated with that. I'll say that again. Principals are going to get me the costs associated with everything they requested by tomorrow morning. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I will give the board a list, and then I'll email that out to the public by the end of the week. And then we'll, at the same time, we'll be getting the traditional building requests by this Friday.
No pressure. No.
They already have the prices. They just, we didn't talk money tonight.
Yeah. Okay, so there's going to be, again, ongoing time and opportunity to ask questions and present ideas and thoughts and get more public comments, so this will be going on.
At our next meeting in November, you'll have the published list of things that were talked about tonight, and we'll let you ask the principals more specific about each one, if you have any questions.
Okay, any final thoughts on the budget section before we move on? Anybody? Audience, anybody?
I do have a question
Yes.
for Rich. If a student damages his or her computer, do we see damages or repairs above and beyond what reasonable wear and tear would be?
Yes.
It's all onto them? Thanks for being short and to the point.
Before we move on, liaison, 1 second, I forgot to add, I'd like to make a motion to add something on the agenda. Under, if it makes sense, 10.3, a discussion, board discussion of the hybrid changes in the planning. So I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh. Martha had her hand up first.
No,
I'm sorry.
great.
Okay, discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on. Union liaison. Neil, Bueller, any thoughts, updates? No?
Not really. Hybrid, and less kids in school and all that, so, yeah.
Yep, it hasn't changed, okay. Oh, I skipped over Bob, Board of Finance, I'm sorry, any comments?
No, I'm just here being a semi-sponge, trying to figure out what everything that's going on.
Yep, good. And now we will turn it over, separate from our budget updates and requests, to the schools and Mary for regular updates.
We are, moving back into the hybrid. So last week we did have a day of professional learning across the district, which had a range of plans for teachers, but also gave them planning time to anticipate the different models and continue to work towards that. So whether that's the hybrid model, distance learning, or full in person. So that was a big focus for us last week to ensure that they had that time, in addition to supporting the rollout of some additional supports for students, specifically at the middle school and at center school, looking at iReady. We're also sharing at some of the buildings the new expectations. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago for educator evaluation, and that the State Department of Education offered flexibility for teachers this year, or that districts could adopt it for their teachers. And while some districts are not adopting that flexibility, we felt here in Stanton it was critical to do so. So we were rolling that out as well. So we continue to also support our remote learners, and we've made some adjustments, particularly at the K-5 level, to add a little bit more live instruction for our remote learners. And we are asking our instructional specialist team that I was talking about, once their many hats, to readjust their schedules to accommodate that. And we've had to remove some of their typical responsibilities as a result. And we also were able to hold Zoom meetings last week with our remote families to share those updates and answer questions.
Okay.
At Memorial, we're really pleased with our transition again this year to back to the hybrid model. It was seamless today from arrival this morning, which was shockingly late compared to what we've gotten used to. And then dismissal went fine, changing those times back, not to have it to stagger. Proud of our team. One of my favorite expressions that Mary used at the very start of this year was, we need to be flexible in order to be responsive. And that kind of just lives in my head every single day. And just so proud of the East Hampton community, our families, our students, our staff, because we're constantly responding to the conditions that we are faced with every day. Memorial's PBIS committee has been really active, both for staff and for students. Andy called a mock meeting with our PBIS team in order to surprise one of our staff members who's getting married. And some of the team members missed that it was a mock meeting in order to surprise her, and went gung-ho with planning things for staff. One of them was a staff treat cart that a student was able to go door to door and offer coffee and treats to staff members. Andy and I would cover the room so they could visit the cart with the student. Veterans, we have a staff member has kind of cheerleaded collecting cards and letters that students have made and have sent those off. And we'll round out this week honoring, celebrating, showcasing kindness.
Center School, we had our first virtual field trip experience, Mystic, and it was very engaging. We weren't sure what to expect, but it was interactive. They had the chat bar open. They were taking question and answer. It was a mix of live, showing artifacts, scavenger hunt. So they did an excellent job. Hats off to Mystic for that, putting that together. And thank you to the PTO for supporting that as well. On Friday, all 5th grade students voted for the Connecticut Kid Governor. So that was a great experience for our students, especially around election time. They listened to the speeches, and platforms ranged from the environment to racial inequality. And then at the end of that, the students cast their ballot. So we should find out in about a week or two the next Connecticut state governor. And just also as a member with a lot of veterans and active duty service members in my family, just thank you everyone for your service. I want to make sure that we appropriately recognize Veterans Day this Wednesday.
Middle school, I think our most significant update is sixth grade enrollments. So we've been waiting for those for a very long time. They arrived by UPS freight last Wednesday, I think, afternoon. And Rich and his team were able to get those out to students, less than 48 hours later. And our sixth graders were home with them for the weekend. So that's great. It's just us and so much. Online assessment tools, synchronous and asynchronous, learning and teaching, continuity of instruction for those teachers and those students. And really, our sixth graders and our sixth grade staff members, they were missing that kind of vital part of, their programming and what the middle school offers. So I think that just kind of brings that cohesion for the 6-8 kind of middle school. So that's a huge update for us, and we appreciate the work of the IT department.
At the high school, we shifted back seamlessly, in no small part to the hard work of Mr. Warner. He's on schedule for 472 for the school year this year. He's worked really hard, but the first day went great. It's a testament to the work of the high school team. We have our annual Veterans Day celebration. It'll be a little different this year. It'll be virtual, and students will be watching it in history classes, either tomorrow or Thursday, depending on what hybrid group they're on. But as always, our social studies department takes the lead in that and does a phenomenal job. I never get tired hearing Mr. Carrillo speak as she interviewed, and I give me chills when I listen to him. So, we're thankful for our veterans. Appreciate all they do.
Good. Questions for Mary of the schools? You're in. Okay. Audience of citizens. Do we have any? No audience of citizens. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Jeff, Nancy, second. Comments? All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Okay. No recognitions tonight, except before we move on to the student rep updates, I do want to recognize as a recognition award, Mr. Robert here, our student rep for the 2020 Junior Book Award recipient winner for our RIT, help me out.
Computing medal.
Computing medal, yes. So I'm going to turn it over to you, but if you want to give us a little, background on what that is.
Basically, the qualifications for that was to be in the top 10% of your class, show rigorous coursework with classes involving computing and mathematics and business and stuff like that, and just to show outside participation with the community and other extracurriculars too.
Nice. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great.
So now we can get your update.
All right.
Okay, so this week all of our schools returned to the hybrid model. I think, like Mr. Burner said, it's been pretty smooth. I think everybody's kind of used to it by now. And then students who are interested in holding class officer elections submitted their campaign videos on Friday. We usually do it in the auditorium, but this year they're doing videos, and those will be viewed and voted on this week.
Wow.
As far as fall athletics, the boys soccer team continued the record of 6 wins, 2 ties, and 3 losses. And the girls continued the record with 8 wins, 1 tie, and 2 losses. And both teams will start the Shoreline Conference playoff tournament this week. As far as the cross-country teams, both the boys and girls cross-country competed in the Shoreline Championship this past Friday. The girls team won the Shoreline Championship with junior Kaylee Gravel coming in first, and several athletes placing in the top 20 as all-conference. And the boys team placed second as the runner-up to HK, with senior Alexander McMillan placing second overall, and several athletes placing in the top 20 as all-conference. And the volleyball team continues the record of 3 wins and 7 losses, and they play again tonight away at Hale Ray. And as far as fall sports banquets, Each individual sport will have their own virtual Zoom meeting to recognize and award all athletes.
And one of those young ladies who was in the top 20, I believe, was sitting amongst us tonight, so congratulations.
All right, personnel has not met, policy curriculum.
We met as prior to this meeting and have a couple second reads later on.
Yes, we do. Okay. Finance, transportation, building and grounds.
Yes, we did meet, and we had an update on, we talked a lot about PPE, the cost, and whether or not the state will reimburse us, when they'll reimburse us. We talked about Chromebooks, which now have arrived, and just had sort of a state of the state of where we stand with the operating budget. I think Karen put the information on all our places, and
I don't know, maybe, can I put Karen on the spot?
so.
Your turn, Karen. So in the meeting, there was kind of the update on state funding and what we were hoping to get and what we've actually received and where that stands. So maybe if you could share briefly a little synopsis of what that is.
Well, we've had a number of iterations of requests from the state for summarizing what it is we needed to open the schools this year and to operate in COVID times through December 31st. And at this point, for the state reimbursement for PPE, the touchless bathroom fixtures and ventilation improvements, they've only guaranteed us just under 75,000, but we need another 333,000 to cover that. As I mentioned to the committee, in the instructions for the various iterations of this grant applications, they state that the governor's commitment is to fully fund the district's cleaning PPE requests. So that's all we know. The last version of our request was submitted a week ago today, and we've had no response. There's been no response to anybody's request that I know of across the state to know where we might be in that percentage that we'll get. But they say we're fully funded, but we only have a 75,000 roughly commitment.
When you say, I'm sorry, when you say commitment, is that money that has come in or just we're going to cover that 75?
It's available for us to draw upon, but they keep taking the, at the same time, they keep putting this out and then taking the application back. So we can't draw upon it until we get a formal commitment from them. And so they keep taking it away. To every school district. And so hopefully we'll hear again something different soon.
Crazy times. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there. Anything
No,
else
no,
you wanted?
that's
Yeah.
why, yeah, that's
Yeah.
why she's here to, yeah.
All right.
I just have another quick question for Karen about the busing. When we're paying the bus contract at the end of the month now, are we paying at 80% for Wednesdays, or are we paying 100%, or?
We received an invoice since the committee meeting, we received an invoice from DACO for September where they billed us and we verified that we agreed with just the days that we ran buses. And they also added to that invoice a statement about reserving the right to charge for the other days at some future point.
Okay.
Learn, any updates from Learn?
Meeting is Thursday morning.
And I think now we can officially take off the high school building committee from our agendas.
Yes, you can.
Remove that after 8.5 years. Wow. Communications.
At your place in your packets is a copy of next year's proposed calendar. I mailed this out to you several weeks ago, and tonight we're considering this first read. You'll vote on it at your next meeting. If you have any questions, it really resembles the calendar that we put in place for this year. We had been going for a couple years with a post-Labor Day start, but when Labor Day is in the 6-7 area, we're going to start the week before, but create a long Labor Day weekend, so students will have off the 3rd, kind of creating that extra summer weekend. So the first day for students would be August 30th, with a 4-day week, and then obviously Monday the 6th is off, and then we're right back into the regular weeks. We've left the professional development days as is. The 2 full days are shared days with Learn, so we can do some regional PD if it's available.
Okay.
And the next thing we put on was subcommittee assignments, just to make sure everybody was aware of the subcommittees. I know Chris had spoken about it at the last meeting, but we just wanted to make sure everybody was there. And I know Justin was not at the last meeting, so you can tell him which subcommittees he's now on. I think some of that may have been communicated, but I wanted to make sure Rosemary had an accurate list.
Okay, so we got Justin. You know you are on finance, transportation, building, grant.
Yeah.
We're going to make a little list here, make sure we're all set. Jim, policy, and personnel. I think you added that. Martha.
Martha's on policy.
Yep, I'm just catching up my notes. Martha is on policy. Amanda is personnel. Nancy, policy and finance. Got the right Nancy. Nancy O. Jeff is policy. Amy is finance, yes. Right. And Nancy K is finance.
And then we want to start our ad hoc budget marketing committee that Amy is a member of, and I think Martha assisted with. As we get closer to January, February, we'll invite anybody who wants to be part of that meeting as well.
Yep.
And give Amy an opportunity to say she wasn't going to be the chair of that.
Any issues for anybody with those moving forward for the next year? Does that work? Okay, great. Thank you.
Enrollment is next, and I just wanted to call your attention because you see a little drop in numbers. The September numbers reflect about 10 additional students less. I shouldn't say additional students, less 10 students who have chosen to be homeschooled for this year. If they are a remote learner, they're getting their education from us. If they choose to completely withdraw and be a temporary homeschool learner, they actually go off our rolls. And we were allowing them to stay on until October to make sure that, it was an experience that was going to work for them. 10 decided in September to do that. And as of October, we still had about 21 students who were in the homeschool category. We've now removed them. So if you look at November, our actual enrollment is about 31 students higher than that, because we anticipate those students will come back next fall. We didn't count our traditional, have always been homeschooled from the time they entered. There's about 31 students who have chosen the homeschool option this year. We anticipate they'll be back. So when we do the NESDEC projections that I'll share with you at the next meeting, those 31 students are included in our count, just so we have accurate projections going forward.
Questions there?
Paul, those 31 students are in the November 1864 number?
No, they are not.
They're not.
So all of the temporary homeschool students are out of that November number now. So that number, if you consider our enrollment as we look forward, we really should consider that to be about 31 students higher. Now, some of them could go on and stay homeschool, but the particular reason they left was out of concern of the pandemic. They didn't want to do remote learning, they wanted to do their own thing. So we are anticipating that the majority of those will come back.
So December might read 1895 or somewhere around there.
No, I don't think you'll see that until next fall.
Oh, next fall, okay.
Yeah, they're not going to just come back
okay.
month by month.
Okay.
We're seeing some of the remote learners kind of go in and out, but the homeschool numbers have been pretty stable.
Okay. All right, so next is the item we added to the agenda, discussion of the hybrid plan. This came up, questions and concerns, and just overall want to have a discussion about where things are and how decisions are made to go from one to the other and necessity and all that. So I called Paul this afternoon and said, we're going to have this discussion.
Yeah.
So
as you were aware when we moved into the orange category, DPH was updating towns every 2 weeks. But with the number of towns that jumped into orange and red as a result of an additional week's data, they kind of had an extra meeting last Thursday, open to municipal leaders, school superintendents, etc. So East Hampton kind of jumped into that red category, but we are exactly at the number 15 per 100,000. Now, there's not 100,000 people in East Hampton, but they have a formula that determines, just to compare all towns, that we are actually right at the number 15. Here's the complexity with looking at the numbers provided by DPH. So DPH, if you look at the top here, uses 5 to 9 cases per 100,000 as yellow, 10 to 14 for orange, 15 plus for red. But when you get down to the education number here, it says consider more distance learning above 25, which corresponds to this is the State Department of Education, 10 to 25 is that middle category, and then 25 cases puts you in more of an area of concern. So when the DPH says red, it only takes the number 15 to push you into red. And keep in mind, DPH is more concerned right now with restaurants, gathering places, bowling alleys, hair salons, etc. And everybody is now agreeing that schools, this model is, which they've used from the beginning of the year, though they separated it more into yellow, orange, and red, now they're blending colors, because what they're saying is not one solution works for all schools. And we are the typical school where we're not seeing transmission of the virus in school. So if a student has COVID or a faculty member has COVID, we've been able to quarantine them quickly. We've quarantined students who may have had close contact, and all of those students, it's about 60 students that we quarantined. None of those students to date have, and their quarantine is over. We don't have any students currently in quarantine. All of those students, nobody ended up with COVID. So the state is looking at schools saying, okay, schools have remained not a place of transmission, unlike restaurants, bars, and other places like that. The CDC further complicates things by using 5 to 20 per 100,000 as lower risk of transmission in school. You don't even enter red till you're greater than 200 cases. Nobody in Connecticut right now is at 200 cases. I think New London is the highest, and they're in the, I think, about 30 cases per 100,000. So there's 3 charts that you have to keep in mind. the DPH chart, the State Department of Education chart, and the CDC chart. Our state really is not paying that much attention to the CDC chart. These are the two charts that, obviously the state of Connecticut is using. So when you hear towns go into red, as soon as you tip into 15, you are in the red category. However, that still puts you in the orange category. Now, obviously, I think this chart was developed and the colors blended a little more because as we've gone on, they're just not seeing that in-school transmission, like I said, as much as other businesses and places like that. So when we first went into the red, we moved back to the hybrid. We gave everybody 1 week notice. Today is day one in the hybrid. We're planning to spend 4 weeks in the hybrid and then move out December 7th. Things can change between now and then. But obviously, moving back and forth causes complications for problems, particularly for our elementary families. If a middle school student or a high school student has to be home, that's one thing. But obviously, we can't have grade school kids at home without an adult. And the rest of the state is, ignore this map for a minute. The rest of this state is working hard to get back to full functioning. And, the number of calls and concerns we get, especially from elementary parents, of, exactly what to do with their children while we go into hybrid is a concern. And I felt, if we were in a place where we were seeing high numbers of students quarantining, high numbers of faculty coming down with COVID, or more of an outbreak in school, then our decision is easy. Our decision is complicated because since we went into orange, we haven't even quarantined any other students or faculty members. We had, as our numbers crept into the orange, when those 2 weeks were going up, that's when we were seeing our own cases go up. So it was that Columbus Day, 2 weeks. In that 2 week period, as we crept up into the orange, that's the data that put us into the orange. That's where we had a faculty member at the high school and middle school, and we had a student at the high school and middle school, and that resulted in the quarantining. We ended up as orange, and we did not, we just have not had a case. I know people are being very careful, and we're experiencing a little bit of luck right now. Anything can change. But we have tipped into the red. That came out last Thursday, just as we were getting ready to go into the hybrid. So the complication with us being in the hybrid is we've moved into the hybrid and we don't have a lot of cases going on. We know the hybrid is difficult for families. It's a safe model. It is not an educationally sound model. The hybrid model that we have selected to use only has 3 days of contact with teachers, and the students are home 2 days doing homework. It's meant as a short-term hybrid. That solution cannot take us through December, January, and February, and even be considered remotely acceptable for education. In fact, Mary was on the phone today with the State Department of Education. We had a conversation about students in quarantining and whether they're absent or, how is the state planning to count that? And their response was, well, when students are quarantining, they should just be doing the remote learning from home in the hybrid. Mary said, we don't have that as an option. And there was silence on the end of the phone, and the comment was, so the students are, all the hybrid students are doing nothing on 2 days of the week except homework or other material supply. And she said yes, of course, because that's what we're doing. But the feeling is that is just not a model that really is acceptable to the state. It's a short term, let's move into the hybrid for 4 weeks like we did in September. We're doing it now. But as the model is now, I can't stand up here and say that is the right model educationally. And I think we have to balance both. safety, and education at the same time, because it's possible.
So what is it, we're surrounded by towns that are doing hybrid,
Yeah.
like long-term, you know, in
Correct.
January.
Glastonbury, Ram have
Right.
been in the hybrid.
Right.
There's 5 days of contact with teachers.
So, yeah, I mean, so I guess the question is, what are they doing that we aren't? And why don't we consider evaluating those options more thoroughly as opposed to announcing full in-person right now, which is precarious at best, because, I mean, the numbers are going down, they're trending bad. We know that they're 2 weeks behind anyways.
Yeah.
A week now, right?
Well,
Isn't it?
right, they're giving
restaurant
weekly
said it's 2
updates.
weeks.
So, right, so
We get
the,
weekly updates, but the data is 2 weeks old by the time we get it, and we already know that it's trending in the wrong direction. So, to announce that we're going back in full-time seems contrary to the numbers that we're getting. So why not evaluate what these other towns around us or the districts around us are doing and try to fix our hybrid model more thoroughly, make that be a better educational model. You know?
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And what I would recommend is that we look at what Glastonbury is doing, Ram, Colchester, Cromwell, in that basically it's grades 6 through 12 that are using a 5 contact day hybrid. The kids are in 2. They connect through their Chromebooks on the 2 days they're not in, and then everybody has a day of distance learning in the middle. I'd recommend K-5 in person. We haven't seen cases of quarantining at Memorial or Center School. And even as towns around us turn red, in orange, they've been able to maintain that K-5 in person. It requires a lot of logistics. I don't know that we'll have that by December 7th.
Right. So
we had worked to have that for now, and we just could not move forward.
And I think it's time, I'm going to put people on the spot maybe, because we had this discussion at the last meeting. This came up. And I know Paul said you were talking with Neil and things had just started to progress to get to that point. So I guess I'm going to ask like an update on where that stands, because it was brought up at the last meeting to go to this type of hybrid model.
We have some people who are willing to pilot the model at this point.
Okay.
So right now, I think we have 3 middle school teachers, a high school teacher at this point. So we really are looking for, and a center school teacher. We're looking for K-6-12 to kind of pilot it and work out the kinks and see if we can get that up and running.
So I just want to think this out. So if we do a pilot now, say for the next few weeks, we're in this, and January, February, we have to go back to this type of model. Will we be able to offer this at that point? If we do the testing and...
The district is absolutely ready to do that. We've got Chromebooks for the teachers. So every teacher, 6 through 12, would have a Chromebook. So they have their laptop, they can project onto the board, they've got their notes. There's a Chromebook that will record. It doesn't require a camera. They can use the Google Meet through the Chromebook. Okay. There's an opportunity for them either to set it up or to have the student in the front row say, okay, when I go over here, turn the Chromebook to me. When I go to the board, turn the Chromebook to the board. When there's something interesting going on, or the teacher can do it themselves. So we have the equipment, and we could launch that.
Can we get an update on the pilot, on how it's working out for them, whoever
I've
those
just started
teachers
today.
are?
Yeah.
But I mean, when they're doing it, can we get an update of how it's working?
Yeah, and I think, whatever we can do to expedite it.
I don't want to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I just kind of buttoning the same thought about pushing the wrong direction. I mean, just today, Glastonbury sent out email to their parents to say that they're staying in hybrid and to be prepared to go full remote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, so they're looking at, they have increased numbers in their schools, so it's in direct response to that, but still, they're right next door, and that's the direction they're looking to go.
So we have issued our full distance learning schedules. Those are already in place. Right. There's not an issue. The only issue is making this hybrid valid for December 7th, if that's going to be the board's interest. And I just don't know that we can do that.
Yes.
I was wondering how, when Rich stood up and gave his, very extensive list of needs, how the fact that we have not been funding adequately our technology, how that has impacted our ability to do a more, a hybrid model that relies more on tech and projectors and
Yeah, so first of all, I know Rich was talking about, technology. I don't want people to watch this and feel like we're not grateful for the amount of money town council gave us, because they did push through, plenty of Chromebooks for us. The delay in Chromebooks was not because of funding. It was because every school in the United States and around the world is trying to get their hands on Chromebooks. So we actually are in a very good place with Chromebooks. We do need to fund more, other things in technology, but Chromebooks is something that this town council and Board of Finance have always been committed to. So we have the technology to go into the hybrid model that we have spoken about. It is not a matter of technology. In fact, Rich and his team have prepared drops in the building to support that type of learning. And even if teachers were ill about them Googling into the classroom, which we piloted a couple times, we can now do that throughout the district as well.
Amazing. Other questions? Yes?
Just a quickie, when we get our weekly highlights from you at the end of the week, would it be possible for you to include by school if there, we obviously don't need to know who, but the numbers, like if there are so many students or so many teachers within each building that are having to quarantine? Is that a possibility?
Yes. Yes, I always send out, every time there's a student or teacher who has a positive case of COVID, the board gets notified and everybody in the district gets notified.
I think it just would be helpful for us to put all of this in context if we could see like, okay, there's two teachers ended up being in quarantine in X school, and 15 of the students from that school had to be in quarantine because of that.
Yeah.
I think that would just be helpful.
You do have the occasional kid who's quarantined
Sure.
because they play hockey out west part of the state,
Right.
kid comes down. I'm not going to include all those
No,
numbers,
no,
just
I think
anything that
so.
we do internally. You currently have nothing going on right now.
I know, and I want to commend on that note the teachers and the staff and the kids. Even with those ones that we did have quarantined, there was no transmission from that. So, and again, the positive test results weren't from in school; it was from out of school incidents. So, kudos to everyone in the schools.
And I think, the cases that are spreading now are, they're really not faults of families, but, families are moving back inside, families are getting together, and, or you have a few people over and you find out, 3 days later, one of them just tested positive, and, now you're quarantining, or you find out you've tested positive, and then it just, that's, when that comes into the school, that's how we end up quarantining students.
So right now, at this moment, we have no staff or student in quarantine?
There's a couple of students quarantined from non-related school events individually.
Yeah.
Unless I'm wrong, principals correct me, I don't think we have anyone in quarantine. We have a couple people who are out, not positive.
Gotcha.
They're getting tested. So,
Okay.
but that is not a situation where we've ended up with having to quarantine kids. So there are one or two staff members, one in high school, one in Memorial, who through an outside event are waiting to get tested or may need to be quarantined.
Okay.
And this enhanced model that we're talking about with the 5 days of some form of contact, whether it's in person or Google Meets, we're talking about it sort of in connection with a designated hybrid model that would be dictated by the district, but now we're talking about quarantine students, and that's going to serve them. I mean, those kids are up to
Right,
14
so
days
60
at home.
students that have been quarantined.
Yeah, I'm looking at Robert, he talked last time about his
I mean, that would
experience.
be-
Basically have been, we send homework,
Yeah.
But they would be considered a quarantine student. They could Google it on the A days.
Every day.
Yeah.
And Google it on the B days, and basically not
Yeah.
lose, even though it's 14 days, with the weekends in there, it can be 10 days of classes, 8 days of classes.
Yeah, you're connecting and, still part of it, so that would be fantastic. And we think that by our next meeting, a couple weeks, we'll have some sort of feel for how the piloting is going, pretty reliable sort of
We just had some
experiences.
teachers kick off today, so we have a couple others who are, inquiring in the process, so I think by 2 weeks from now, we'll probably be able to provide some direct feedback from them about how that's gone. And just in terms of what districts are doing, the state requires a weekly update from school districts on the model that you're in, whether you're hybrid, remote, or in person, and how that's going. There's some other data that they request from us. So that's all very publicly available, so you can go on the EdSite website to review all of that, to see what's happening in our region. So the most recent update, the data is due on Wednesdays. So last Wednesday's data is up, which takes us through the end of October. And it'll be updated in the next couple of days. With the holiday this week, it might take a little bit extra, but by the end of this week, we know what districts were doing last week. So we know that, as we were saying, Glastonbury currently is pre-K through 5 is in, hybrid 6-12, Portland is in, according to the site, K-12, East Haddam is in K-12, Region 13 is in-person K-12, Old Saybrook is in K-12. Then there's other districts, most in our area, if they're not all in, are doing the in-person K-5 or K-8, and then hybrid 9-12 based on cohorting limitations in high school.
So does that seem to be like the standard if they're doing, half in, half out, the K-8 or, a K-5?
K-5 or 6 to 12
6 to 12.
is traditionally where the split is.
It's a K-5, 6-12 split. There's a few that have done it differently.
We are doing more cohorting in the middle school than other middle schools are doing.
Yeah, and maybe want to contact Cromwell to see what they're doing in the middle, if they're doing a similar model to us, because they are all in through 8th grade, and then only hybrid at their high school. And from the information publicly available on those districts, the hybrid portion does involve
You do have one board member whose daughter is a part of the pilot, so you can get it from a parent's point of view as well as the curriculum director's point of view.
Right, yes, I will be happy to report in 2 weeks.
But I applaud those teachers who just unselfishly jumped right into it.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, and it was nice to hear of people who were willing to give it a try.
Yeah, with positivity and energy, it really came across in the communication,
Yeah.
so that was really appreciated.
Nice.
As a parent, yeah.
Other questions? I gotta say, Justin, aren't you glad you came in at this time? Perfect timing. Budget, COVID, you name it. Yep. Okay, so we'll have updates on that in the next meeting then, how are things going? No presentation, unfinished business. We have 2 policies from last meeting to approve this evening. First one, Jeff, were there any updates, concerns from anybody on that one?
I didn't hear anything.
So we'll have discussion. Motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education Policy and Curriculum Committee and approve policy 0000, the mission. Even though it says voted unanimously, we haven't gotten there yet.
So moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nancy O, second. Jeff? Discussion? Questions? All those in favor? Unanimous. Now it's unanimous. And the second policy, motion to accept the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Board of Education Policy and Curriculum Committee and approve policy 0100 philosophy. Yep, Nancy K, second. No changes from last time on that? Any questions? All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, so now we have the calendar that we looked at, that we're going to approve last time, but we're looking at graduation already. So need a motion to set the tentative graduation date for Friday, June 18th, 2021.
So moved.
Jeff, second. Jim, discussion there? No? Okay, all those in favor of that motion? Unanimous. Future business, anything anyone needs to bring up for future meetings?
Just have
Amy.
a quickie. I really feel strongly that we should be advocating for a second representative on the Capital Committee. We're the only of the elected boards that has one representative. I went back and did some digging in some of the minutes that were available online. And out of 8 capital meetings last month, we didn't have representation at 3.
You mean last year?
Yeah, last
Yes.
year.
Okay.
I'm like, wait a minute, last month, wait.
I'm sorry, no.
Had me nervous.
Yeah, last year we didn't have, and 2 of them were during February where a lot of the decisions are being made.
Yeah.
And I want to preface that this was not Nancy. She
No,
was doing this.
no.
And I don't, it's not, I just feel like we're in the middle of a pandemic. What if someone's sick and then we don't have someone there advocating for all of our technology and the things that we need? I
So,
have made
okay.
an inquiry, and it is a town council policy, so it would not require like moving heaven and earth. We would just have to, you would have to ask the town council to make a change in the policy
Do you know the next meeting?
tomorrow. For town council?
No, policy, or capital.
It was supposed to be last Wednesday.
Yeah.
They were talking about postponing it to the 18th, but we have not had any update as of now.
Okay, so then, instead of future, let's have a quick discussion on this. How do the rest of you guys feel about pushing to get a second member on our capital committee? And if we agree, then maybe we can have a letter written up and sent to them before they meet.
What's the representation like from other
Sure.
I believe there's 2 from the Board of Finance,
From each, yeah.
2 from the
So
Board of the Town Council, and 1 from the Board.
Yeah, I think you're spot on.
Yeah. Other
I
thoughts?
think, not that I'm defending the action, but the Board of Education is one branch of capital, and then there's all the town ones, so there's the DPW, there's recreation, there's library, there's like,
Lot more.
education is 1/8 of the lines of the various categories.
Yeah.
But that's typically where we get hit hard. So I really feel like we need.
And that's not a defense, that's just, I think,
No, I
explaining
know.
why.
But how much of the budget?
Given that, and that's, likely why, I think to your point of the uncertainty with the pandemic, that we really do need an additional person just.
Another voice there,
to be
yeah.
seen.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
think it's
guys.
also helpful for our representative to have someone to confer with, in the middle of a meeting.
I don't recall the numbers, Paul. What is our portion as a part of the whole? Do you?
Dollar-wise?
Yeah.
It depends on,
Like,
every year it's
Yeah.
different.
is it is there any sort of
One.
proportion we could sort of?
Maybe 110, 180. Rich, does that sound right? Rich is always at the meetings.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But there's.
Not that it has to be
Right.
tied to that.
No, but there's also things like when we put money into like repairing the fields, and those are crossover things that we,
Yeah.
you know, we don't have a representative from the library going to the capital committee, but I really feel like we should have equal footing with the other elected boards.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like we have a consensus and agree on that. But before I think we do, I know Nancy had volunteered to take our spot for Mark. We have a second volunteer for that before we push for it.
I know.
You know?
I know.
So capital typically meets, definitely during budget time, mornings.
It typically has been mornings.
It was the first Wednesday.
It was Wednesday mornings.
Yeah,
There's usually a total of 6 or 7 meetings.
yeah. So with that in mind, is anyone available at this point to be our second person?
I mean,
Yeah,
I brought it up. I'll throw
Amy,
myself.
are you available?
Depending upon what model we're in,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I think, you know, Nancy volunteered, so we have our set
Right.
capital person, and maybe we can alternate who's available for the second person. Would that option work?
Is that an option?
I don't
Would I be able
know.
to sit in, because I do a staff meeting on Wednesday mornings, I would be able to maybe miss one a month,
Right.
but I could not commit to being
I
there
don't know
every
if they make it a
Wednesday.
set, or if maybe we could do like an alternate, or,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
we can
I-
pursue that, but the two, we in consensus? Agree on trying to get 2 reps from the Board of Ed? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so let's pursue that, and then we can work out the details on that end.
all right,
Okay?
thank you.
No personnel, audience of citizens, Mr. Hine? And we have the calendar attached, motion to adjourn. Oh,
Can I
wait,
just-
wait,
One
yes.
thing, so, you know, we talk about being safe and all of that, and I'm making all sorts of adjustments at work. I'm surprised, honestly, the rest of the room is doing a really good job. We're all sitting very close together. And I think we need to look at that, because like I had a colleague, I got an email, I went to 2 entire schools, I had a colleague that went out, like I saw her leave, and they were spraying her room, and I was not a close contact, so like I don't have to quarantine, but like there were people that were close contact. And if, you know, one of you, God forbid, tested, you all are in close contact, you're within 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes. So I think we have the space here. I think that's something to think about. For
We'll set the
meetings.
nameplates out even further.
Yeah. So I'm not being antisocial, I'm just recognizing folks are dropping around
It's
me like
November.
flies.
Yeah.
I understand.
All right, note taken. Motion to adjourn. Martha, Amanda. Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, no, I can do that.
Yeah, we can use that. Yeah.